That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Trade Talk. This week we have a pretty massive thing to talk about. This is Mr. Miracle by Jack Kirby. And as you can see, this is a thick frickin' trade. So Jack Kirby, of course, the original creator of The Fourth World and Mr. Miracle. And so this collects his original run on Mr. Miracle, the original issues of Mr. Miracle, written and drawn by none other than the king of comics himself, Jack Kirby. So this is an 18-issue collection, which is, again, just huge. And it's really good, really cool, really interesting. I like this a lot more than I think I've liked other things that I've read by Jack Kirby. I was talking with Steve at one point, and he is of the opinion, and I kind of tend to agree with him, that Mr. Miracle is definitely the best thing from Kirby's Fourth World. So this was just a really neat read to get through all of it over the course of a week. And it's just got a lot of really cool, dynamic art in it, you know? Like, I love all the traps that Kirby shows us and gives us for Mr. Miracle to deal with. And just some really cool action. This is a very bombastic book. This book is anything but subtle. Put it that way. Excuse me, sorry. It's the interpretation that a lot of people have come up with, and I think it may even be based on something Kirby himself said, is that Mr. Miracle was Kirby's metaphor for his own anxiety. And so you get a lot of, like, very tense moments. Like, I love this building, the internal of the building, the top, as they're about to drop Mr. Miracle and Trunk off of the top floor of the inside of this building. And so in this issue, we just get, in this, we just get Mr. Miracle dealing with stuff. It's funny to talk about this particular story because this is the Tom King's Mr. Miracle book has been borrowing excerpts from the original narration by Kirby. So this week's issue number 4, if you're watching this well after the fact, took for the opening segment the opening narration from this issue, wherein Scott is literally being thrown in a trunk off the top of a building. But yeah, so like you got a lot of intense imagery and just high action, high intensity moments, and then of course Mr. Miracle always finds a way to survive at the very end. And like, this is probably, I think, my favorite cover in the entire run. Geez, that's perfect. Like, everyone really likes the issue 1 cover of Mr. Miracle. Where's that? Like, everyone really likes that one. This screams Mr. Miracle more than anything else to me. Dr. Wunderbar's murder machine. It's like there's a freaking A-bomb. It's pretty good. Also, I never realized that Big Barda, like, her kind of skimpy costume design was an original Mr. Miracle, was an original Jack Kirby design on the costume. I always thought that was like something else DC threw in because they didn't feel like drawing the complexity of Big Barda's costume every time. But no, that's straight out of Kirby. Dirty old man. It's okay. Barda's awesome. And like, I love this scene too because got a bunch. Scott's ordered a cannon. His escapes are fucking ridiculous. Scott has ordered a cannon, and the guys are trying to get it off the truck, and they're all like, "Oh, be careful with it; it's an antique." And Barta just comes and like freaking lifts the thing up and carries it over his shoulder. It's a really cool image of her. There's your image, most iconic image of Big Barda, I think. So it's really fun, really cool book. At the same time, though, I don't like, as much as I enjoyed it, I always feel so weird talking about Jack Kirby stuff, like in context of a review, because usually my takeaway is just, yeah, I liked it, or I thought parts of it were cool. I just have a really hard time talking about the specifics, reviewing the specifics of a Jack Kirby book, without just kind of venturing out to talk about Jack Kirby. Like, I feel like I've got a really well-formed opinion of Jack Kirby, and if you want to hear that at length, you can watch an episode of Geeky Gentleman Steve and I did of just talking about Jack Kirby, and I'll link that in the description. But since I've talked about Jack Kirby at such length at various points on this channel, I don't really feel the need to do that for this review. But then I don't know how much else I have to say. Every issue, like, builds, but it more or less stands on its own. Like, we get some flashbacks to Scott's time on Apocalypse. We get wicked cool art like that. I love the detail and the reflective, shiny look of the metal. You know, I can tell you things about this, like Funky Flashman is an allegory for Stan Lee. I can talk about that kind of stuff all day, but I can't really summarize the overall story because it's just Mr. Miracle's story. It's just him, you know, doing his escapes and getting into wacky situations, and then having to deal with those and try to do the right thing. And then, of course, they find out he's an escape artist, and they put him in a trap to escape from, and he does it every time. And, like, he'll give you see, the way I really did it was explanation at the end. I will say I do have one complaint about this that, like, does legit bother me. So you have Darkseid's female Furies, of which Barda was originally the leader. And at one point they get set on... They're the villains of an issue. They get set on a mission to take out Big Barda and Scott Free for running away from Apocalypse. But, like, eventually... And I could probably find this if I just go a little bit further ahead. Eventually they just start working with Scott Free. Like, they just become members of the team. And that I really don't like. Not because, like, I don't like the characters or anything. They're fun, enjoyable characters. Let me go further ahead. Not that further ahead. They're fun, enjoyable characters and all. Like, here's a panel that shows them all as a team together. They're fun, enjoyable characters, but, like, I feel that you make Apocalypse out to be this really harsh, disgusting area in which people are treated terribly. And we actually get some flashbacks to Apocalypse, and it is awful. We get, like, Scott Free's mentor. We get a story about him and how he, like, hid amongst the people of Apocalypse, and how, like, the people that he was hiding amongst hated him because if he was thought to be hiding in their area, the parademon soldiers of Apocalypse would find it easier to just kill everybody in the area than search him out. So, like, he's hated on Apocalypse, and you have people on Apocalypse that he's trying to get to break out of this Darkseid is mindset, and they don't they don't want to do it. They value their own life and Darkseid's life over freedom. And so that's all really interesting. And it makes Scott Free an interesting character in that he was able to overcome all that and escape Apocalypse. And it makes Barda an interesting character in that she is clearly in love with Scott Free, which doesn't really amount to anything until the very last issue. She is in love with Scott Free and is thus able to find the strength to run away and pursue happiness with him outside of Apocalypse. But then when you have the female Furies run away with her, it kind of undercuts that narrative of the oppressive, scary nature of Apocalypse. Like, you know, I always go back to the Superman the Animated Series episode where Superman fights Darkseid and beats him to a pulp and then throws him down to his people to let them deal with him. And they pick him up and take him inside to heal. And Darkseid stops them briefly and says, "I am many things, Superman, but here I am God." So, like, that's always been my mindset for what Darkseid is on Apocalypse, what it means to be a citizen of Apocalypse. And so escaping is a rare thing in my mind, and should be. And so Jack Kirby, of course, is the writer. He gets to determine what Apocalypse is and who gets to escape Apocalypse, right? Fuck no. You know, he gets to say it all he wants, but that doesn't mean a damn thing unless I buy it, and I don't buy that it's okay for people to just leave Apocalypse. I think that Scott Free and Barda should be the, like, 1 in a million exception that gets away. Like, I believe, like, 1 in 1,000 rejects Darkseid, but I can't believe that, you know, Apocalypse just lets so many of these people go. And the female Furies running away with Barda really, really does not work for me. I bookmarked a scene because I wanted to talk about some general thoughts on Jack Kirby too. Because I've seen people say that, like, Jack Kirby is a really great visual storyteller, but Stan Lee and others would stomp on his visual storytelling by just adding dialogue and narration that didn't need to be there. Jack Kirby added dialogue and narration that didn't need to be over his own art, which is, again, why I tend to say that, like, Jack Kirby is a really good ideas guy, but I don't think he has the best sense for storytelling and, or for the word part of storytelling, for the words. So, like, here's this example where you can just see what's happening in this panel. Barda and Scott are falling through a trapdoor. That is clearly what is happening in that panel. I'm going to read all the dialogue, and I'm going to read all the words on that panel. Suddenly, coming to ugh! The floor's opened up! We're falling! No, no! If he wants to slow you down on reading, having Mr. Miracle say, "We're coming, Ted, ugh," and having Ted say, "No, no," would be enough, because we can clearly tell that they're falling through the floor. Having Barda talk there is just unnecessary. It is just fundamentally, the visual is enough in that moment, yet we are seeing more of it, or we are reading what is happening. And that is just, you know, I don't like when that stuff happens in any comic, really. I can tell what's going on. And maybe, you know, this was a time when younger people were reading comics, and so they felt the need to hold hands more. Maybe, but I just don't feel like anyone would have trouble understanding that they're starting to fall through the floor. You got motion lines, you got this break in what's happening in the context of the scene, it just feels unnecessary to me. And again, this is more a wider point on my thing with Jack Kirby is like, he's a good ideas guy. He's a good plotter. He's really not good at dialogue and knowing when not to use it. So yeah. Flaming swastikas. I love the Kirby crackle. It's always cool to see the Kirby crackle stuff. I mean, it's really bad. I spent like a lot of on this, and it's cool to see all the scenarios and stuff that Scott Free gets put into that he has to escape from. That I really like. Like at one point, he's in basically just like a howitzer right before it's about to fire, and so he has to escape from that, and that's really neat. Like I like a lot of the stuff. I just don't think I have a ton to say about it. Let me see what's going on with my live comments. Maybe they can help me pursue the conversation further. Oh. Yeah, I'm not really seeing anything in the live comments either. I don't know. I'm just not digging it, guys. Or it's not that I'm not digging it. I highly recommend this, and it's really cool that DC put out a collection of the entire run. That's really awesome that they put all 18 issues into one volume like this. But I recommend you go read it, but that's the thing is like, it's really just to be read. Like, it's just to be read and enjoyed, and especially if you like Kirby, you will love this. But for me, I don't have a ton I can say about it. Like, again, all the ridiculous scenes that Scott Free gets put in, like, he gets into a metal barrel and Big Barda has a giant nutcracker. And she's going to crack his nuts with it. And he has to escape in time. Like, I like all the crazy scenarios that he's put in and stuff. That's cool. Shiloh Norman's introduced towards the end of this. The last issue is interesting in that, like, all of the villains that have appeared so far show up in the last issue, and Big Barda and Scott get married. They don't admit that they love each other until the last issue, mind you. But they get married in the last issue, all the villains show up, Scott has to keep beating them left and right. And then Orion and Highfather show up to take him away to New Genesis. So it's cool. It's a little all over the place, but it's certainly cool. I'm a little disappointed Darkseid himself doesn't make a more significant appearance in this. Like, he's in at the very end. Like, he's literally at the very end, the very last page is Darkseid. You got Shiloh Norman say, "Wow, look at that dude. Have you been out in the storm all this time, mister?" "I am the storm." "I did spoil it, though. It had deep sentiment, but little joy. But life at best is bittersweet." Darkseid quotes. That's probably not the Darkseid quote you want to get a tattoo of, though. Let me find the panel of Darkseid that I did really like from the Origin issue, Origin story we got for Scott of like his escape from Apocalypse issue, because that was really cool. Gotta find it. Kirby's use of perspective is really cool too. Like this, this is an interesting two-page spread because it gives you kind of a sense of vertigo, and just it's a distorted, skewed perspective, but it looks really cool. But I want to find this Apocalypse issue because it's one of the few. It's one of like the 2 or 3 times you see Darkseid. Here we go. So Scott is escaping from Apocalypse with the help of Metron and I can never remember the guy's name. Hireman, whatever Scott's mentor's name. Hyman. Anyway, so he's escaping, and Darkseid suddenly appears. Darkseid suddenly appears and says, "He can take it," being the escape route. "I'll not stop him now. If courage and bravery took him here, some of it was mine. Stay, warrior. Let me complete the destruction of Scott free, so you may live with the majesty that is the power of Darkseid." The young fool goes on. He struggles to rise. If he leaves Darkseid, he'll still find death. If he leaves Apocalypse, he'll find the universe. Let me be scot-free and find myself. And then the last line Darkseid has in that is, "I'll face Orion whenever fate decrees, and in the end I will shut down this universe to all life except the will of Darkseid." So I love the way Kirby writes Darkseid. It's always cool. But yeah, I just don't have a ton to talk about with it. I feel bad because it's a cool book, but that's all I can really say. It's a really cool trade, and you should go read it. Jack Kirby does amazing dynamic things with the art and puts Scott free in ridiculous ass situations like tying him to a torpedo. So yeah, I dig it. I dig it. I dig it. I dig it. Go read it. Go read it. Go read it. Not bad. Only $30. That's about like double a normal trade, so that's not too bad at all. All right, everybody, that'll do it for this episode of Trade Talks. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Until next time, bye.
That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.